He said it so casually, I almost missed it. We decided your brother needs it more. That was the sentence. 17 years old, acceptance letter in my hand, scholarship offer printed in bold, and my father sitting at the kitchen table explaining why my college fund, the one my grandparents started when I was born, now belonged to my younger brother. My mother didn't look at me. My brother didn't say thank you. And I remember staring at the crack in the wall behind them, thinking, something just shifted. Something permanent. 10 years later, I stood in their living room holding a set of keys, but not as their daughter, as the new owner. If you've ever been told you matter less, stay with me. And if this story touches something personal, like it, comment where you're watching from, and subscribe only if you genuinely connect. I read every message. Sometimes silence needs witnesses. My name is Alina Mercer. I'm 27 now, but the version of me that still flinches when I hear the word investment is 17. Growing up, my brother Ethan was the golden child, not in a loud way, not in a cartoon villain way. It was softer than that, more dangerous. He struggled in school. I didn't. He quit soccer after 2 seasons. I stayed in debate until senior year. He needed encouragement. I needed to stay humble. My parents used to say, Ethan just needs a little extra support. I translated that into, Alina will figure it out on her own. When I was 8, I won a regional science fair. I remember standing on that stage, clutching a blue ribbon that felt too big for my hands. I searched the audience for my parents. They weren't there. Dad had taken Ethan to a last-minute baseball clinic. Mom had promised she'd come, but Ethan had gotten nervous about the drive. They congratulated me over microwaved leftovers that night. "We're proud of you," Mom said while rinsing dishes. But they hadn't seen it. That memory stuck, not because they missed it, because I understood something for the first time. I was optional. The college fund was supposed to be different. My grandparents opened it when I was born. They believed in education like religion. Every birthday, every Christmas, there was an envelope with "For Alina's Future" written in careful cursive. When Grandpa passed away, I was 14. I remember him squeezing my hand in the hospital and whispering, "No one can take your education from you." He believed that. I believed that. By senior year, the account had grown significantly. My guidance counselor said I could graduate debt-free if I chose in-state. I chose out-of-state anyway. Not recklessly, strategically. I had a partial scholarship to a business program in Chicago. The remaining balance would be covered by the fund. I had already mentally packed. Then came that dinner. Dad cleared his throat like he was about to announce weather updates. We've been discussing the college funds. Funds, plural, as if they'd both existed equally. Mom folded her napkin. Ethan's engineering program is expensive, and he doesn't have scholarships lined up. Ethan stared at his plate. I felt something tighten in my chest. Okay. Dad leaned forward. You're responsible. You've always landed on your feet. We think it makes more sense to redirect the money. Redirect, like I was a shipping error. It was Grandpa's account, I said quietly, and we're his heirs. Dad replied, calm, rational, final. They'd already moved it. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I nodded, because part of me wasn't surprised. That night, I locked myself in the bathroom and slid down against the door, not sobbing, just empty. There's a specific kind of pain that comes when you realize you weren't overlooked, you were evaluated and ranked. The next morning, I called the university. I deferred enrollment for a year. Then I found 3 jobs. I worked mornings at a bakery, afternoons at a bookstore, and nights cleaning office buildings downtown. I told people I was taking a gap year to gain experience. It sounded intentional. It wasn't. It was survival. Ethan left for college that fall. My parents threw him a party. Banner in the living room, sheet cake, photos. I stayed in the kitchen refilling drinks. At one point, a neighbor asked me where I was headed. "Not sure yet," I smiled. Later that night, I overheard Mom whisper to Aunt Carla, "Alina's always been independent. She doesn't need as much." That sentence hardened something in me. I stopped sharing achievements after that. When I finally enrolled a year later, it wasn't in Chicago. It was at a state school 2 towns over. I paid tuition in installments, loans, grants, overtime shifts. I studied business and real estate law, not because it was glamorous, because I wanted to understand contracts, ownership, leverage. I graduated at 23 with debt and a quiet kind of hunger. By 25, I was working for a small property management firm. By 26, I started buying undervalued homes with investors who underestimated me. And by 27, I saw my childhood home listed online for sale. I stared at the listing for a full 10 minutes before I clicked on the photos. There it was. The pale yellow siding Dad repainted every 5 years like clockwork. The oak tree in the front yard where Ethan broke his wrist falling from the 3rd branch. The kitchen window with the tiny crack in the lower corner that Mom always said gave it character. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 2,140 square feet. As is. That detail made my stomach tighten. As is meant they needed out fast. I hadn't spoken to my parents in almost 2 years, not dramatically, not with slammed doors or ultimatums. It was quieter than that. Calls that became shorter, holidays I couldn't get off work, texts answered hours later, then days later. Distance by erosion. The listing price was lower than market value, which meant urgency. I checked public records. The mortgage had been refinanced twice in the past 5 years. There was a second lien. Ethan. I didn't need confirmation. I already knew. My brother had always been ambitious, but not disciplined. Engineering didn't work out after 2 years. Then there was a startup, then another. My parents had co-signed loans. They believed in him the way my grandparents believed in education, faith without condition. I leaned back in my office chair and let the weight of it settle. The house wasn't just a house, it was their last stable asset, and they were selling it. I could have closed the tab and moved on. Instead, I called my business partner, Marisol. "What do you think about a quick-turn residential?" I asked casually. "Depends," she said. "What's the catch?" I hesitated. "It's my parents' place." Silence. "That's complicated." "I know." "Are you trying to save them?" "No." The answer surprised even me. "I'm trying to understand something," I said slowly. "Understand what?" "How leverage works when the emotional debt is older than the financial one." Marisol exhaled softly. "Okay, send me the listing." We ran numbers. Even with repairs, it was a smart buy, and I had liquid capital available from a recent commercial flip. I didn't tell my parents I was interested. I went through an agent. Formal, clean, business. The offer was strong, slightly above asking, fast close, no contingencies beyond inspection. They accepted within 48 hours. When the paperwork came through for signatures, I saw my father's handwriting for the first time in years. It looked smaller, more hesitant. The inspection revealed what I expected: deferred maintenance, aging roof, HVAC on its last breath. But the bones were solid, just like I remembered. The closing date was set for 30 days out. I drove by once before then, parked down the street like a stranger. The curtains were drawn, the lawn untrimmed, the oak tree looked thinner somehow. I thought about being 8 years old, running through the sprinkler while Mom yelled from the porch that I'd catch a cold. I thought about Grandpa's voice in that hospital room. No one can take your education from you. They hadn't, but they'd tried to take the security it represented. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady. The day before closing, my phone buzzed. Dad. I let it ring twice before answering. Hi. His voice sounded older, thinner. Alina, I wanted to tell you we're moving. I saw the listing. A pause. Oh. We had to make some adjustments, he said carefully. Adjustments. Always the soft language. I'm sure. Another pause. You're doing well, I hear. I'm stable. That's good. That's very good. He cleared his throat. I know things didn't always feel fair. There it was. Not an apology, a weather report. I waited. We did what we thought was best at the time. For who? Hovered on my tongue, but I didn't say it. I understand, I replied evenly. And I did. They prioritized the child they believed was at risk of failure. They miscalculated the one that wasn't. Maybe when we're settled, you can come by, he offered. Maybe. We hung up. On closing day, I wore a navy blazer and low heels, professional armor. The title company conference room smelled like stale coffee and printer ink. I arrived early. Marisol sat beside me, flipping through documents. You sure about this? She murmured. Yes. The door opened. My parents walked in together. Mom's hair had more gray than I remembered. Dad's shoulders curved inward slightly. They didn't look at me first. They looked at the table, then at the paperwork, then finally at me. Confusion. Recognition. Something else. You? Dad said softly. I held his gaze. I'm the buyer. The room went very still. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Ethan wasn't there. Of course he wasn't. Dad blinked twice. You're purchasing the property? Yes. Through an LLC, through capital they never saw, through years they didn't witness. But why? Mom whispered. Because I can. Because you taught me how leverage works. Because Grandpa's money didn't vanish, it redirected into something stronger. But I didn't say any of that. It's a good investment, I replied. Dad sat down slowly. The attorney began explaining the documents: transfer of title, settlement statement, disbursement schedule. Business language wrapped around family history. Mom's hands trembled when she signed. Dad paused before his signature. Alina, he said quietly, eyes still on the paper, we never meant for you to feel... He didn't finish. I watched the pen move across the line. Ownership transferred. Not just legally, emotionally. The keys were placed in front of me. Small, ordinary, heavy. Mom looked up. Where are we supposed to go now? That question hung between us. Not accusatory, not demanding, just real. I didn't answer immediately, because this wasn't revenge, but it wasn't rescue either.
Mom's question stayed in the air longer than it should. Where are we supposed to go now? It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, it was just tired. That's what hit me. Tired. Not entitled, not defensive, just worn down. I didn't answer right away because the honest answer had layers. You already signed a lease, didn't you? I asked gently. Dad looked up, surprised. Yes. 2-bedroom condo on East Ridgeline? His eyebrows pulled together. How do you... Public records, I said calmly, and I read contracts for a living. They exchanged a look. Relief flickered across Mom's face. So the question hadn't been literal. It had been emotional. Where do we stand now? The attorney cleared his throat, sliding the final packet across the table. Once funds clear, possession transfers immediately. I nodded. Dad slid the house keys toward me. The metals scraped lightly across polished wood. For a second, I saw my 10-year-old self sitting at the kitchen island doing math homework while Mom made spaghetti. I remembered Ethan kicking my chair because he was bored. I remembered Dad telling me to ignore him. Focus on your own work. I did. I always did. After the paperwork finished, Marisol excused herself to take a call, giving us space. Dad stayed seated. Mom stood, but didn't move toward the door. "Are you planning to renovate?" she asked carefully. "Yes. The roof first, then plumbing. Cosmetic after that." Silence again. "You could have told us," Dad said. "About what?" "That you were the buyer." I studied his face. I didn't think it would change the terms. That wasn't entirely true. It would have changed the tone. Maybe they would have resisted. Maybe they would have tried to renegotiate. Maybe pride would have gotten in the way. Business works cleaner without emotion. Mom smoothed her coat sleeves. "Your grandfather would be proud," she said quietly. That one landed. Because Grandpa never compared us, he just invested where he saw consistency. "I hope so," I replied. Dad finally stood. "I suppose we should let you get to it." He hesitated near the door. "This doesn't mean we expect anything from you." I almost smiled at that. "You already received the full market value," I said evenly. "We're square." The word hung between us. Square. No debt, no leverage, no unspoken account balance. They left. The room felt larger after they walked out. I stayed seated, staring at the keys. My hands weren't shaking. I thought they might be. Instead, I felt level. Not victorious, not bitter, just clear. That evening, I drove to the house alone. I used the key slowly, like it might resist me. It didn't. The door opened with the same soft drag against the frame. The air inside smelled faintly like dust and lemon cleaner. They'd already moved most of their things. The walls felt hollow. I walked into the living room. The indentation in the carpet where the old sofa sat was still visible. In the corner near the fireplace, I remembered standing at 16, holding the college acceptance letter in my hand. I'd been shaking then. "State University offered me partial merit," I said. Dad nodded. Mom smiled. Then came the sentence that still echoed sometimes. "We've already committed your fund to Ethan's tuition deposit." Committed, like it was a strategic allocation. "Loans build character," Dad added that night. I swallowed hard, standing in that empty living room. Loans did build something, but not character. Pressure. And pressure either breaks you or compresses you into something denser. I walked upstairs. My old bedroom door creaked the same way. Inside, the walls were a pale gray now instead of the soft blue Mom had painted when I was 12. I ran my hand along the window frame. I remembered sitting there after graduation, calculating interest rates on student loans while Ethan's acceptance banner hung over the staircase. One quiet humiliation. I never told anyone about it. At the family dinner before he left for school, Dad toasted Ethan's bright future. No one toasted mine. I cleared my throat in the empty room. That memory didn't sting the way it used to. It felt archived. Downstairs, I checked the basement. The furnace clanked weakly when I tested it. There was work to do. Real work. Concrete, measurable, solvable. I liked that. On my way out, I stood in the doorway and looked back once. Not at the structure, at the narrative. For years, this house symbolized the place where I came second. Now, it was simply an asset, and that shift mattered more than the deed. My phone buzzed as I locked the door. Ethan. I hadn't spoken to him in months. I answered. "So it's true," he said without greeting. "Yes." "You bought it?" "Yes." He exhaled sharply. "You're unbelievable." "Why?" You could have just let them sell it to someone else. They did sell it to someone else. To you, he snapped. And? Silence. You're making them look stupid. I leaned against my car. No, I'm making a business decision. They're embarrassed. That wasn't the goal. Then what was? I considered that. To close a loop. He scoffed. You're always so clinical. Maybe. Or maybe I just stopped bleeding where they expected me to. They don't get to punish you like this. I'm not punishing anyone. Then what are you doing? I looked at the house again. I'm investing. Another silence. You always thought you were better than us. That accusation was old, predictable. I never thought that. I just stopped waiting. For what? For someone to notice I didn't need rescuing. He didn't respond immediately. Then, softer, they were scared. Of what? That you'd leave. I almost laughed. I did leave. Exactly. The call ended not with resolution, but with air between us, which felt appropriate. That night, alone in my apartment, I poured a glass of water and sat on the edge of my bed. No champagne, no celebration, just quiet. Because this wasn't about winning, it was about equilibrium, and I had a decision to make next, one that had nothing to do with profit margins.
The decision wasn't about the house, it was about them. 3 days after Ethan's call, Mom showed up at my office, unannounced. She didn't storm in, she didn't accuse me of anything. She just stood at the reception desk, hands folded over her purse, like she was waiting for a dentist appointment. When my assistant buzzed me, I almost didn't go down. Almost. But I did. She looked smaller in daylight. Not fragile, just less certain. "Hi," she said. "Hi." We moved into the conference room. Glass walls, clean lines, neutral lighting. No family photos anywhere. I keep my work and my history separate. Or at least, I try to. She sat down slowly. "I've been thinking," she began. That sentence used to make my stomach tighten. It usually meant something had already been decided without me. "I didn't realize you were the buyer until the attorney mentioned your middle initial," she said. "Marisol told us after we signed." I figured. She nodded. "I want to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly." "Okay. Did you buy the house because of us?" There it was, the question beneath all the others. I didn't rush. "I bought it because it's a good investment," I said first. She held my gaze. And because I could." Her jaw shifted slightly. "That's not what I meant." "I know." Silence stretched. Finally, I exhaled. Yes, part of me wanted to own something I was told I didn't deserve. She absorbed that. "I never said you didn't deserve it." "No," I agreed. "You just redirected it. The college fund. The thing that was supposed to be equal." She flinched at the word. "We didn't think you'd mind," she said. "I know. And you didn't?" "I did," I corrected gently. "I just didn't argue." She looked down at her hands. "You were always so independent." That wasn't independence. That was survival. The words landed heavier than I expected. Her eyes lifted. Survival? When Ethan needed something, the house shifted around him. When I needed something, I adjusted. That's not fair. It's accurate. She inhaled sharply. "You were strong." I was quiet. Another silence. I remembered being 13, standing in the kitchen while Ethan complained about math tutoring. Mom rubbed his shoulders. Dad offered to hire a private tutor. The next week, I asked for a laptop upgrade because mine couldn't handle the software my class required. Dad said, "Make do, it still turns on." Subtle humiliation, not loud enough to fight, just consistent enough to notice. Mom blinked. "We thought you were fine." "I wasn't," I said evenly. "I just stopped asking." The room felt smaller now, not confrontational, just honest. She swallowed. "Ethan told us you're planning to renovate." "Yes." "And then what?" "Rent it, maybe sell later." She nodded slowly. "You're not moving in?" "No." "Why?" "I thought about that. Because I don't need to live inside something to own it. Because memory doesn't require proximity. Because I already built my own space. It's not my home," I said finally. Her eyes glistened faintly. "I didn't mean for you to feel less." "I know. But you did." "Yes." The honesty didn't shatter anything. It just removed the last layer of pretense. She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. I didn't touch it. "What's that?" "Your grandfather left a separate savings bond in your name," she said softly. "We didn't give it to you at the time." I looked at the envelope but didn't move. "Why not?" "We used it to help with Ethan's final semester." There it was, the part I hadn't known. Another quiet subtraction. My chest tightened, not with rage, just recognition. "That wasn't yours to use," I said. "I know." She slid the envelope toward me. "We can't undo it, but we've been repaying it. It's not the full amount yet." I stared at it. Interest accumulated, years layered. A different kind of debt. "I didn't come for repayment," I said. "I know." She wiped at her eye quickly. "I came because I realized something when you bought the house." "What?" "You don't need us." The sentence wasn't bitter, it was factual. I never needed to be rescued. I just needed to be considered. Her shoulders dropped slightly. "We were scared you'd outgrow us." The same word Ethan used. Outgrow. I wasn't trying to leave. I was trying to build. And we didn't see that. No. We sat in that acknowledgement. No yelling, no dramatic apologies, just the weight of miscalculation. "I don't want money," I said finally, sliding the envelope back. "I want clarity." She looked confused. "What kind?" "I'm not the backup plan. I'm not the quiet one who adjusts. If we have a relationship, it's equal." Her voice softened. "You're setting terms." "Yes. A boundary. Not loud, not cruel. Clear." She nodded slowly. "I can respect that." We stood. At the door, she paused. "Your father won't say this, but he's proud." I didn't smile. Pride doesn't replace presence. She accepted that too. When she left, I sat back down at the conference table alone. The envelope remained on the table between us, like a symbol, not of money, of pattern. And I realized something important. Buying the house wasn't about reclaiming space. It was about closing accounts, financial, emotional, historical. There was one final conversation left, and this time it wasn't about property. The final conversation happened at the house. Not my office, not theirs. Neutral ground. Renovation had already started. Floors sanded, cabinets removed. The walls that once held framed photos were bare and uneven, showing faint outlines where sunlight hadn't reached for years. I asked them to meet me there on a Sunday afternoon. Dad arrived first. He stood in the living room, hands in his jacket pockets, staring at the stripped hardwood like he was trying to remember where the couch used to sit. Mom came in quietly behind him. For a moment, none of us spoke.
The house sounded different, empty. Every breath echoed. "I didn't think I'd be back here like this," Dad said finally. Neither did I. He walked slowly toward the kitchen. The old table was gone, just dust patterns on the floor. "You're really changing it," he added. "Yes," he nodded. "You always were decisive." It almost sounded like a compliment. Almost. We stood where the refrigerator used to hum. "This is strange," Mom said softly. "It is." Dad turned toward me. "I owe you something," he said. That surprised me more than anything else had. "I owe you nothing," I replied carefully. "I owe you an apology." The word landed gently. No theatrics, no trembling. Just a man finally choosing a sentence he should have said years ago. "For the fund," he continued. "For not asking you what you wanted. For assuming you'd just handle it." I didn't interrupt. "I thought I was being practical," he admitted. "Ethan needed more structure. You seemed fine." There it was again. Seemed fine. "I wasn't fine," I said. "I was self-sufficient." He nodded slowly. "And I mistook that for not needing support." "Yes." He swallowed. "I'm sorry." I believed him. That didn't erase anything, but it shifted something. Mom reached for his arm briefly. "I should have fought harder for you," she added. The honesty in her voice felt fragile. "You don't have to fight now," I said quietly. "You just have to show up differently." Dad studied the walls. "You're not selling it right away, are you?" "No." "Why not?" "Because I don't want this to be revenge." He looked confused. "It isn't," I clarified. "It's just an investment." A pause. "You buying it, it felt like you were proving something." "I was," I admitted. "What?" "That I don't lose when you shift resources." The air changed slightly. Not defensive, just real. "You didn't lose," Mom said gently. "I know that now." Dad ran his hand across the counter space where the sink once sat. "I worried about you leaving," he said quietly. "I didn't leave. I expanded." That seemed to settle into him. "You don't need the money," he added after a moment. "No." "You don't need this house." "No." "So what do you need?" It wasn't a challenge. It was genuine. "I need to not be measured against my brother," I said evenly. "I need my milestones to stand on their own." He absorbed that. "We never meant to compare." "But you did." Silence again. Not sharp, just reflective. Dad exhaled slowly. "I was proud when you bought it. Not threatened. Proud." That was new. I watched his face carefully. It didn't look defensive. It looked humbled. "Pride is good, just don't let it replace partnership." He nodded. We walked toward the front door together. The afternoon light hit the empty hallway differently without furniture blocking it. "I don't want you to think we chose him over you," Mom said softly. "You didn't choose him. You prioritized him." She winced slightly. "It's different, but it still leaves a mark." She nodded. At the doorway, Dad turned back once more. "You're not angry." It wasn't a question. "No," I said honestly. "I outgrew anger." He studied me. "And us?" "I considered that. I'm not trying to outgrow you. I'm trying to grow without shrinking." That seemed to reach him deeper than anything else had. He stepped forward and hugged me. Not tight, not performative, just present. Mom followed.
3 people standing in a house that used to define us. Now it didn't. When they left, I stayed behind. I walked through every room once more. The small bedroom that used to be mine, the hallway where I'd overheard quiet conversations about tuition and sacrifice, the kitchen where I'd learned to swallow disappointment without comment. It didn't feel heavy anymore, just dated, like an old version of myself I no longer lived inside. I didn't buy their house to punish them. I bought it because I could. Because I understood something at 26 that I didn't at 18. You don't fight for validation. You build until it's unnecessary. Ethan texted me that evening. "Are we okay?" I smiled slightly. Yes. And I meant it. Because the truth is, this was never about beating him or embarrassing them. It was about one quiet realization. I don't need to be given anything to succeed, and I don't need to take anything to feel equal. A month later, the renovation finished. The house sold for nearly double what I paid. I wired the profits straight into a new account. Not for revenge, not for proof, just growth. My parents came to the closing. They shook my hand, not like I was the quiet one, not like I was the independent one, like I was an equal. And that was enough. If this story felt personal to you, tell me what boundary you had to set. Thank you for listening.